Welcome to StopFake, the place where we dissect fakes about Ukraine and more. Russian fakes claim that Western scientists are predicting an 80% chance of a nuclear accident in Ukraine, while at the same time, Ukraine has agreed to store Russia's nuclear waste. And of course, because Ukraine abused and exploited the Crimean peninsula, it chose to become Russian. Let's get to the details. The Tsargrad television channel announced that the world's leading scientists are sounding the alarm and are predicting an 80% probability of a major nuclear accident at one of Ukraine's nuclear power plants in a study prepared by a scientific journal called Energy Research and Social Science. Tsargrad is a monarchist site affiliated with the Russian Orthodox Church and Russia's security services. This new doomsday prediction was aired on the anniversary of the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster. Tsargrad's story starts with the claim that the third power unit of the Rivne nuclear power plant's autotransformer was allegedly damaged on April 29th, leading to a fire that lasted over an hour and the eventual shutdown of the unit. But there was no fire at the Rivne nuclear plant. On the evening of April 29th, a shutdown did occur, but it had nothing to do with Tsargrad's mythical fire. According to the Rivne plant management, the stop occurred because of an erroneous protection signal about the loss of power from a turbo generator. And more importantly, this event was so insignificant that it is not even classified as an incident on the International Nuclear and Radiological Event Scale. But the most egregious fake claim in this Tsargrad non-story is the assertion that Western scientists are predicting an 80% probability of another nuclear accident in Ukraine. Tsargrad refers to an alleged study published in the Energy Research and Social Science journal without citing the study itself, who conducted it, and when. Well, in fact, Energy Research and Social Science did publish a study called Reassessing the Safety of Nuclear Energy back in 2016 that summarizes a statistical analysis of 260 nuclear energy accidents and incidents. The authors conclude that the rate of civil nuclear accidents since 1952 decreased significantly and from the 1970s reached what appears to be a stable level of around 0.003 events per plant per year. Quote, "We find concrete evidence of a history of learning from previous accidents within the industry, especially the significant reduction in event frequency after the Chernobyl accident in 1986. The study does not contain any other references to Ukraine, nor does it make a claim about the probability of a nuclear accident in Ukrainian power plants. This is just another example of Ukraine bashing by one of the Kremlin's faithful media flunkies." A fatal deal, another disaster, the next catastrophe. These are just some of the epithets Russian and Ukrainian propagandist media have resorted to in their reactions to the news that Ukraine will build its own repository for high-level nuclear waste. Ukraine agrees to store nuclear waste from Russia, a repository for Russian nuclear waste to be built in Chernobyl. These and other distorted headlines and outright fakes were filling up Ukraine's information space over the past few weeks. Another publication claims Ukraine is obliged to accept this nuclear waste in accordance with an agreement about nuclear cooperation signed with Russia back in 1993. Ukraine's high-level nuclear waste repository project is not a construction project for Russian nuclear waste. In fact, the only nuclear waste to be returned to Ukraine from Russia is that which was generated by Ukrainian nuclear power plants. Presently, Ukraine sends spent fuel from 3 of its 4 working nuclear power plants to Russia for reprocessing. Only one atomic plant in the eastern Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia has its own reprocessing and waste storage facility. Spent nuclear fuel is reprocessed to separate spent nuclear reactor fuel into nuclear materials that may be recycled for use in new fuel and material that is discarded as waste. Ukraine is planning to construct a repository for this nuclear waste. Due to the lack of its own storage facility for both spent nuclear fuel and high-level nuclear waste, Ukraine is forced to spend $200 million annually to have the job done in Russia. Russia will send reprocessed nuclear fuel and waste back to Ukraine already this year, something that is mandated by the Joint Convention on Spent Fuel and Radioactive Waste Safety, which Ukraine ratified in 2000. According to the convention, which applies to all countries that use nuclear energy, each country is ethically and legally responsible for its own nuclear waste, and all nuclear waste will be disposed of in each of the countries concerned. With this year's completion of a central spent nuclear fuel storage facility and the construction of a storage facility for high-level nuclear waste, Ukraine will be in full compliance of the convention and will no longer have to rely on Russia in this field. RT has characterized Ukraine's foreign ministry's efforts to develop a plan for the return of Crimea as underhanded and directed against the people of Crimea. The publication quotes Russian State Duma Member of Parliament Anton Morozov, who said, quote, "The people of Crimea made their choice in favor of Russia because Kyiv in fact abused the peninsula and infringed on the rights of its people in every possible way. Crimea did not receive sufficient social and economic development." The chairman of Russia's Federation Council, Konstantin Kosachev, also chimes in to declare that the topic of Crimea is no longer on the international agenda and calls such Ukrainian plans, quote, "a confirmation of the total misunderstanding by the Ukrainian authorities of what happened with Crimea." The status of Crimea has not changed since 2014 because this is what the people of Crimea want, having rejected Ukraine's policies towards the region, he says. In an interview with Novoye Vremya, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said that the question of returning Crimea to Ukraine is not a diplomatic fantasy, but a completely pragmatic calculation. According to Kuleba, Ukraine must figure out several tactical and strategic challenges. For example, keeping occupied Crimea in the news and ensuring that the issue is not forgotten, and to make sure that the sanctions regime is effective and finding additional international instruments to put pressure on the Russian Federation. Now, Moscow continues to peddle the referendum in Crimea as an expression of the residents' free will, even though it was conducted under blatant pressure by the Russian military and the menacing presence of Russian military equipment parked on the streets of cities. The referendum and its results have not been recognized by the international community. Resolutions were adopted calling for the withdrawal of Russian troops from the peninsula and condemning Russia's violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. RT's claims that Crimea is no longer on the international agenda are also completely untrue. As recently as March 2020, the United States and the European Union issued statements in support of Ukrainian sovereignty and condemning the illegal annexation of Crimea. That's it for this week. You can find much more dissected disinformation on our website, StopFake.org. Be vigilant, stay safe, look out for fakes, and don't listen to Russian disinformation, because washing your hands and social distancing will in fact protect you from the coronavirus. And if you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, forward it to us for a truth autopsy. I'm Marko Suprun, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.